Watch your mouth. Our Bible study will be coming from James chapter 1, verse 26. That's James chapter 1, verse 26. And I'll be reading from the King James Version. And it reads, If any man among you seem to be religious and bridleth not his tongue, but deceiveth his own heart, this man's religion is vain. Just a little background. James wrote this book to address the other Christian congregations about different challenges, trials, and situations that they need to be aware of and what they need to do to avoid certain situations from happening in the future so they can grow properly and effectively throughout the world. So we see starting off reading it says, if any man among you seem to be religious. So it's saying that if someone they think they are religious, they really think they're religious. Now that's used to address those who may be focused on the appearance, the show, the image of being a Christian, but not allowing the law through Christ to change the way they act and being doers of the word. If you go back and read a few verses before 26, it talks about not only just hearing the word of God, but also being a doer of the word, actually put into action the things that you're reading. And one way of doing it is watching how you speak, which leads us on to our next point. It mentions, if any man among you seem to be religious and bridleth not his tongue. A bridle is a tool that was used on a horse to control it. And even now, when you watch different horse races, they have that tool around the horse's mouth that when the racer gets on top of that horse, that's what they use to control that horse. It can either tell it how fast it needs to go, tell it when to slow down, but that bridle is used around that horse to control it. Now, this is saying if a man or if someone thinks they are religious but can't control their tongue, their religion is in vain. And the way for us to bridle our tongue, the way for us to control our tongue is through the word of God. It's through us praying daily. It's through us making sure that we're trying our best to be Christ-like. That's how we can better control our tongue. So let's look at some reasons why it's important to control your tongue. If you go over to James chapter 3, it talks about the importance of that tongue. I'll read just verse 1. It says, in this James 3, verse 1, it says, My brethren, be not many masters, knowing that we shall receive the greater condemnation. And the word masters is referring to teachers. And it's talking about that everyone may not be a teacher because there's a great responsibility of it. Because if you're teaching and saying the wrong things, you're not only messing up your own self, but you're leading your church and you're leading those around you down the wrong path as well. That's why it's saying that your tongue is important, because if you're saying the wrong thing, you can be leading a group of people down the wrong path. So yeah, you're going to receive a greater punishment because you are leading other people astray. And we have to make sure that when we get in these certain positions, or just overall as we talk to people, make sure that we're saying the right things and living that lifestyle so we can be that right example and show people how we should live as Christians. Let's look at some other verses in James chapter 3. Uh, let's go to verse 3. It talks about that, behold, we put bits in the horse's mouth that they may obey us, and we turn about their whole body. Verse 4. Behold also the ships, where they be so great and are driven of fierce winds, yet they are turned about with a very small hem, whithersoever the governor listen. Verse 5. Even so the tongue is a little member and boasteth great things. Behold, how great a matter a little fire kindleth. The tongue is a small member of our body compared to our hands, our head, our body, our various muscles, but it has great power and great influence to the rest of our body. Just like it talked about in verse 3, that you put a bit in that horse mouth to control it. Just like it goes back to James 1:26. And also talking about how there's a tool used to steer the ship. That small tool used to steer the ship can make a great influence where that ship goes, left, right, going straight, or turning around. That's the amount of the impact it can have. Although it is a small part of that entire ship, or it's a small part that's connected to that horse. But it's going back and showing that our tongue has great influence and power. So we have to be careful. Let's look at James chapter 3, verses 10 through 12. It says, out of the same mouth proceeded blessing and cursing. My brethren, these things ought not so to be. Verse 11, doth a fountain send forth at the same place sweet water and bitter? Verse 12, can the fig tree, my brethren, bear olive berries, either a vine, figs? Or can no fountain both yield salt and fresh? So going back to verse 10, it's talking about our tongue can be used to bless and to curse. As a Christian, that shouldn't even be an option. That's why it's saying these things ought not so to be. We shouldn't be doing it, especially as a Christian. We shouldn't be thinking, our heart and mind shouldn't be wanting to do those things. But yet still, it's just showing that's what that tongue can do. But it's showing the comparison in verse 11 and 12. It says, doth a fountain send forth sweet water and bitter? No. A fountain is either going to be sweet water coming out of it, or that fountain is either going to be bitter. Not both at the same time. As a Christian, we cannot straddle the fence. We're either going to be speaking things that are good or things that are bad. We should not have it in between as a Christian. We should be doing things that are good. And that's an example there. Now, there are other ways our tongue can be used for good and evil. If you check the comment below, I give different Bible verses and also just a brief description talking about different ways our tongue can be used for good and evil below. So the last thing we want to look at is different ways we can control our tongue. We can do that by studying our Bible so we'll know how to say things, how to handle situations as a Christian. We need to be praying daily. We need to make sure that we surround ourselves with like-minded individuals on a daily basis so we can be accountable and keep each other on that right path. And just all together, making sure we have the right mindset as we live our life. Because the things that we say are a reflection of our character. It is a reflection of who we really are as a person. So as we live our life, let's make sure that we are controlling our tongue. Let's make sure that we are trying our best to live that right lifestyle that Christ and God will be proud of.